My neighbor kept calling CPS on me for made-up violations, so I bought her house and evicted her. Living next door to someone who made it their mission to destroy my life wasn't something I ever expected when I moved to this quiet suburban neighborhood in Ohio 3 years ago. The house was perfect for me and my 8-year-old daughter, with a decent backyard and good schools nearby. Everything seemed like a dream until she moved in next door about 18 months later. At first, the complaints seemed almost reasonable if you squinted hard enough. She called the city about my grass being too long when I was recovering from surgery and couldn't mow for 2 weeks. Then she reported my fence for being 6 inches too high, which cost me $1,500 to fix even though it had been there for decades before I bought the house. I started to notice her watching us through her kitchen window, taking notes on a little pad whenever my daughter played outside. The first CPS call came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was getting ready for work when the caseworker knocked on my door, explaining that someone had reported concerns about my parenting. My heart dropped into my stomach as I invited her in, watching her eyes scan my clean, organized home. She asked about the bruise on my daughter's shin from soccer practice and wanted to know why there were dishes in the sink from breakfast. The whole experience left me shaking and humiliated, even though the case was closed within a week. 2 weeks later, another call. This time, the anonymous reporter claimed my daughter was being neglected because she was playing alone in the backyard while I was inside cooking dinner. The caseworker was apologetic, but had to investigate every report. I started documenting everything, taking photos of my clean house, my daughter's healthy meals, her homework completion, anything that might protect us from these baseless accusations. The third call came after my daughter had a sleepover with 3 friends. Apparently, the noise level constituted a dangerous environment for children. By this point, I knew it was my neighbor, but proving it was another matter entirely. I installed security cameras facing my own property and started keeping detailed logs of our daily activities. The paranoia was eating me alive, and I found myself second-guessing every parenting decision, wondering if it could be twisted into something sinister. Summer brought more harassment. She called CPS because my daughter was outside in shorts and a tank top on a 90-degree day, claiming it was inappropriate dress. She reported that my daughter was home alone when I ran to the corner store for milk, even though she was never alone for more than 10 minutes and I could see our house from the store. Each investigation was dismissed quickly, but the stress was overwhelming my entire world. The breaking point came in August when she called CPS claiming I was running an illegal daycare because my daughter had friends over for a birthday party. 12 kids in colorful summer clothes laughing and playing in my backyard somehow constituted a business operation in her twisted mind. The caseworker who came out was frustrated, apologizing for the obvious waste of resources while assuring me that the pattern of false reports was being noted in their system. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how this woman was using a system designed to protect children as a weapon against me and my daughter. My little girl had started asking why the lady kept visiting, and I struggled to explain without terrifying her. I felt helpless, angry, and desperate for a solution that didn't involve moving away from our perfect home and starting over somewhere else. I started researching my neighbor's situation out of curiosity and frustration. Public records showed she was 3 months behind on her mortgage payments and had been served with foreclosure papers 2 weeks earlier. Her financial troubles explained the increasing frequency of her harassment, like she was taking out her stress on the easiest target available. The irony wasn't lost on me that someone so concerned about my parenting was about to lose her own home. The idea hit me like lightning during my morning coffee. I had been saving for years to buy a rental property as an investment, and I had excellent credit, along with a substantial down payment ready. What if I could solve 2 problems at once? I called my bank that afternoon and started the process of getting pre-approved for a loan large enough to buy her house at auction. Foreclosure auctions in our county happen every month at the courthouse steps. I spent weeks researching the process, understanding the legal requirements, and preparing my finances. The morning of the auction, I arrived early and waited nervously with my cashier's check, hoping no other bidders would show up. When her house was called, I was the only person who raised my hand. Walking back to my car with the deed in my hand felt surreal. I owned the house next door to me, and my nightmare neighbor had exactly 30 days to vacate the premises. The look on her face when the sheriff's deputy served her with the eviction notice was something I'll never forget. Pure shock mixed with the dawning realization that her victim had somehow become her landlord. She tried to negotiate, offering to pay rent she couldn't afford or begging for more time to find somewhere else to live. I remained professional but firm, explaining that I needed the property vacant for renovations. Every interaction was documented and recorded, partly for legal protection and partly because I wanted to remember this moment when I felt powerful instead of helpless. The final week before her move-out date, she made one last desperate call to CPS. This time, she claimed I was harassing her and creating an unsafe environment for her own teenage son. The caseworker who came out was the same one who had handled several of my cases, and she was visibly annoyed. She spent exactly 10 minutes at my house, mostly apologizing for having to follow up on such an obvious retaliatory report. Moving day arrived with a small U-Haul truck and two guys who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. I watched from my kitchen window as they loaded her belongings, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and something that might have been pity. She had created this situation entirely through her own actions, but seeing someone lose their home was still difficult to witness, even when they deserved it. The real surprise came 3 days later, when I found a letter slipped under my door. She had written a long, rambling apology, explaining that her divorce had left her bitter and angry, and she had taken it out on me because I seemed to have the stable family life she had lost. She admitted to making all the false reports and said she understood why I had bought her house and evicted her. The letter was probably meant to make me feel guilty, but instead, it just confirmed what I already knew about her character. I decided to renovate the house and rent it out to a nice family with young children. The irony of replacing my harasser with exactly the kind of family she had tried to destroy wasn't lost on me. My new neighbors are wonderful, and their kids play with my daughter almost every day. Sometimes I watch them from my kitchen window, remembering when that same view filled me with dread and anxiety. The CPS calls stopped completely after she moved out, confirming what I had suspected all along. My daughter stopped asking about the lady who used to visit, and our lives returned to the peaceful normal I had always wanted. The investment property turned out to be profitable too, generating enough rental income to pay for my daughter's college savings account and some family vacations. 6 months later, I learned she had moved to an apartment complex across town and was working at a retail store. Part of me wondered if she had learned anything from the experience, but mostly, I just felt grateful that she was no longer my problem. The whole situation had taught me that sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and that financial planning can be more powerful than any legal action. Looking back, I realized this experience changed me in ways I hadn't expected. I became more confident, more willing to stand up for myself and my daughter. I learned that victims don't have to stay victims forever, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply removing toxic people from your life entirely. My daughter learned these lessons too, watching me transform from someone who felt helpless into someone who took control of her own situation. The house next door is painted a cheerful yellow now, with flower boxes under the windows and a tire swing in the backyard. My new neighbors invited us to their housewarming party, and I brought homemade cookies and genuine excitement about having normal people living so close to us. Standing in their living room, I remembered the fear and anxiety that used to consume me every time I looked at that house. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I had just endured her harassment until she eventually lost her house anyway. Would she have found new ways to make my life miserable? Would the CPS calls have continued until they actually found some tiny violation to pursue? I'm glad I'll never know the answers to those questions, because I chose to take control instead of remaining a victim. The whole experience cost me about $40,000 between the down payment and renovation costs, but it was worth every penny for the peace of mind it brought. My daughter can play outside without being watched and judged. I can parent without second-guessing every decision, and our home feels like a sanctuary again, instead of a place under constant surveillance. People ask me if I feel guilty about what I did, and the answer is always no. She chose to weaponize a system designed to protect children against an innocent family. She chose to make false reports that wasted resources and caused emotional trauma. She chose to turn our neighborhood into a battlefield instead of trying to be a decent neighbor. All I did was use legal means to remove a toxic person from my life permanently. The rental income from the property has been steady, and my tenants are the kind of neighbors everyone hopes for. They keep their yard neat, their children are well behaved, and they've never once called any government agency to complain about my parenting. It's amazing how much more peaceful life can be when you're surrounded by mentally healthy people who mind their own business. I still have the security cameras up, not because I'm paranoid anymore, but because they've become a habit and they do provide some peace of mind. Sometimes I review the footage from those terrible months and remember how powerless I felt, how much anxiety consumed my daily life. Then I look at recent footage of my daughter playing happily with the neighbor kids and feel proud of what I accomplished. The lesson I learned is that sometimes the most effective response to a bully is to remove their power entirely. She thought she could make my life miserable indefinitely, but she never considered that her own financial instability made her vulnerable to someone with better resources and planning. Her weapon became her weakness, and my supposed victimhood became my strength. My daughter is 10 now, and she doesn't remember much about the harassment period. She just knows that we used to have a mean neighbor who moved away, and now we have nice neighbors who let her pet their dog and invite her to birthday parties. That's exactly how I want it to be, with those dark months fading into a distant memory that doesn't define our lives. The house is worth more now than what I paid for it, thanks to the renovations and the improving neighborhood market. If I ever decide to sell it, I'll make a profit on top of all the rental income it's generated. But for now, I'm happy keeping it as a reminder that sometimes the best investments are the ones that buy you peace of mind and protect your family from toxic people. I never saw her again after moving day, though I heard through neighborhood gossip that she was doing better in her new situation. Maybe losing her house was the wake-up call she needed to get her life together, or maybe she just found new targets for her misery. Either way, it's no longer my problem, and that's exactly how I like it. The whole experience taught me that you don't have to accept being someone's victim forever. Sometimes the system fails to protect you, and sometimes the authorities can't or won't help. But if you're creative and determined enough, you can often find ways to protect yourself and your family that don't involve waiting for someone else to solve your problems. Today, I'm grateful for my peaceful neighborhood, my wonderful tenants, and the knowledge that my daughter is growing up in a home where she's safe and loved. The CPS files are closed, the harassment has stopped, and life is exactly what I hoped it would be when I first bought this house. Sometimes the best revenge really is just living well and being happy.